Hello, it's me.
So our first vocab word that we're going to look at is militarism. So the first four words that I'm going to give you definitions for are actually the four main causes of World War I. So as you go through the video, pause it at times if you need, if I've gone too fast and you need to still write down the definition, but make sure you at least get the definition down for each word. I'm going to explain each word as we go and then give you a little bit of outside information as to how we're going to learn about it within the unit, but make sure you at least get the definition onto your note sheet. Whenever we do these videos, that's going to be the most important thing. Did you get the information you need to understand what we're learning in class? And that's why I'm going to give you copies of the notes as well, or give you examples of what's going to be appropriate and what's acceptable in terms of what you do at home when you're watching the videos. So militarism, the definition, a policy of glorifying military power and keeping a standing army always prepared for war. So main culprits here, Germany and Great Britain. They're really building up their military. We already know that Germany is a very military-based society. That's how they became a country, with Otto von Bismarck just kind of going out there and starting these wars and gaining land and taking over. The United Kingdom then and Great Britain, that's where we see imperialism. That's what they do, is they go out, they use their navy, they use their military, and they get things done for themselves. So this building up over time of military power is what's going to be at the root of the start of World War I. The next one is alliances. An alliance is a union or pact formed for mutual benefit, especially between countries who agree to support and fight in defense of one another. So that's like having somebody's back in a formal or informal way. A lot of these countries are going to start kind of taking sides, I guess is what you can say. Is you're going to have Russia, England, and France. They don't really trust Germany, so they kind of form an alliance. Germany, on the other hand, feels like they're being kind of sandwiched in by these countries that have aligned with each other. So they're going to make allies with Austria-Hungary and Italy. I mean, Austria-Hungary is going to be very similar culturally to Germany. So they make these alliances early on in the 1900s. So as of 1914, when the war breaks out, this is the way Europe looks with this map right here. You have Russia in red, England in red, France in red. They are on one side of the alliances. Then you have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy going right down the middle of Europe, being the other part of the alliance. The one that's going to start really all the trouble is down here in the Balkan peninsulas, and that's one of your vocab words coming up later on, but that's where it's all going to kind of come out of. But then because of these alliances, it's going to pull everyone into war. So these alliances, it's not a way to avoid war. It's that when one person goes to war, pretty much everybody goes into war. Imperialism. I mean, this slide is so basic, but we just learned it. So imperialism, the policy in which a strong nation seeks to dominate other countries politically, economically, socially. We know the culprits here. We know who was affected by it. We know that Great Britain, France, Germany, Japan. I mean, Japan's not really involved with World War I, but they are very involved with World War II. And so imperialism is like this root of all evil that we've been talking about. It causes hard feelings around the world. It's a disregard of anything in terms of culture and the way people live their lives. So imperialism is really going to be one of the main causes. I mean, we're literally spelling out the word main with militarism, M, alliances, A, imperialism, I. And I have a guess that you probably can figure out the last one, which is nationalism. So nationalism, the belief that people should be loyal mainly to their nation, to the people with whom they share culture and history. So, I mean, a lot of this is just blind nationalism, and by that I mean they're going to follow their flag. They're going to follow their people wherever they go. And this idea that I'm German and I need to really support the German people. To that end, then we're also going to support Austria-Hungary because they are our ally. So in Austria-Hungary, kind of, it's not forced, but something happens that they go to war. Germany's got their back. So nationalism is built up that they're loyal to their people, they're loyal to everything that they want in the world is really going to be one of the causes of World War I. Now, these first 4 words were the causes. The rest of these words are going to be words that we're going to see either with events that are going to happen, the aftermath of war, the location of different battles, or when the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which really doesn't mean anything to you yet, but it will, are going to be these next few words that we're going to go through. The Balkan Peninsula, so this is this area that used to be the Ottoman Empire. Serbia is going to be our hot box here that's really going to cause a lot of trouble. But the entire region today, the Balkan Peninsula, is Greece, Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, and the European part of Turkey, which just means the western part of Turkey. Down here it says Ottoman Empire, that's today's Turkey, and the former republics of Yugoslavia. So the Balkan Peninsula is what's going to be considered as a powder keg. It's called the powder keg of Europe. A powder keg literally just means a barrel of gunpowder. So one little spark and the whole thing could just blow up. So these people, because they want to be separate from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they do not want to be kind of taken over by them, they're at any moment liable to just kind of blow up into a revolution. So it's this term used to describe the Balkan Peninsula. When the war actually breaks out, that's what happens. The lid is blown off of this cartoon over here. The lid is blown off of that Balkan powder keg. They assassinate the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary in Bosnia, in a city called Sarajevo. And from there, Austria-Hungary declares war, and then we have our alliances. And from there on, everybody's dragged into a war in Europe and Russia. All right, so trench warfare. This is, World War I is so different from all previous wars, not only because it's fought on such a large scale, so it's all over Europe. Germany ends up fighting on the Eastern Front against Russia as well. So it's a huge war on the one hand, but the way it's fought is so, it's mind-boggling to think about it now, but they use mainly trench warfare. So you had the opposing side. So you would have the European allied powers, which were Great Britain, France, and Russia to start with. And they kind of dug trenches in the ground when they came up against German or Austro-Hungarian forces, and they dug trenches in the ground and they just faced each other, and that's how they fought. So the picture on the bottom right here of a trench, this is how detailed some of these trenches would get. You would have your company headquarters dugout where your officers would be literally underground. You had your communication trenches where you could run between the front lines and the reserves, and you could resupply the front lines, and they had wiring and things to keep attacks from behind for protection. And then you also had this land in the middle called no man's land, where it was just no one wanted to be out there, but you did, if you were going to get anywhere in terms of gaining land in this war, you had to leave the trenches, go fight each other, and then retreat back to your trenches. But if you did gain land, then you literally just right there then dug a trench right there. And so in World War I, you're going to trade huge losses in terms of people for very small gains. So you're going to build over 500 miles of trenches throughout Europe, and then basically come to a stalemate at times where no one was going anywhere. They're all just sitting around waiting for the other side to make a move. Out in no man's land, you're liable to just get picked off by those sitting on the other side in their trenches. So this is really changing the way wars are fought. This is no longer, eventually then you're also going to have the airplanes going overhead. So you're sitting in your trenches basically a sitting duck waiting to be attacked. And also on top of that, the disease and the sickness of the trenches. That top picture there, you can see water kind of gathering in the bottom of the trenches. The biggest problem that people had were foot amputations because their feet were constantly just wet. So their feet eventually would start to rot within their boots, and then they get this disease on their feet, and then they had to have it amputated. So it's like, let alone the fact of fighting a war and you're shooting at each other, you're then just sitting there sometimes, and death comes at you in other ways. So trench warfare really changes the whole way that you even see war, how war even works, and on such a large scale. I can't even imagine having 500 miles of these trenches dug across Europe. Now, this really is going to feel like jumping ahead, but in terms of vocabulary, the next one is 14 points. So World War I is fought between the years of 1914 and 1919. So between those 5 years, almost 5 years, you have, basically, because of trench warfare, this stalemate happening, which stalemate means that nothing's happening. No one's gaining any land, no one's losing any land. It's just nothing is being proven by this war. So the 14 points, the United States will eventually get involved in World War I because of a couple things. The main one being that Russia is going to undergo their own political revolution, their own communist revolution, actually. And so because of that, they're going to withdraw from World War I. They literally just pick up and leave. And the United States then kind of gets into the war to fight on the side of the Allies, so on the side of France, on the side of Great Britain, against Germany and Austria-Hungary and Italy. So the 14 points in 1918, President Woodrow Wilson, he proposes this idea. So he has this list of 14 points that would, he thinks, bring lasting peace to the world. So it wouldn't only just end the war, it would then make sure that we wouldn't ever have this war before. They refer to World War I as the war to end all wars. They didn't think this would ever happen again. We know otherwise. We know that there's a World War II. And it kind of stems from the fact that there's one major thing at the end of World War I that really kind of starts World War II. And so this peace proposal created by President Woodrow Wilson was meant to bring lasting peace after World War I, and it includes this idea for the League of Nations. Now, the League of Nations is an early form of what we now call the United Nations. One of the major things of Woodrow Wilson's 14 points was this idea of national self-determination. And so, all it means is that you're allowing people to decide for themselves what type of government they wished to live under. So, if you're thinking in terms of imperialism, these countries that have been colonized, you're really thinking for them, they should be able to decide for themselves what type of government they wish to live under. Or at the end of World War II, Germany loses all of its colonies around the world. And so what do you do with those people? Well, this idea came about of, why don't we let them choose for themselves what they get to do? Colonial peoples, when I use this word throughout the unit, I'm referring to those who are living in colonies controlled by powerful countries. So the imperialized, think in terms of them. So these two pictures here, the one on the right-hand side are your sepoys in India, and on the left-hand side you have China. So these are the people who are under control of a stronger, more powerful country. The next one is League of Nations, and definition is an international association whose goal would be to keep peace among nations. It's an early model of the United Nations. And actually, the ironic thing is it's proposed by President Woodrow Wilson of the United States. But when it does kind of come together as a real thing, he decides not to have the United States participate. All right, second to last, Treaty of Versailles. So this is the peace treaty that's signed at the end of World War I that ended the war between Germany and the Allied powers. This is extremely hurtful to Germany. It's really going to hurt them in the long run, and it's really then just going to lead into World War II. It punishes them, basically. It forces Germany to accept what's called the War Guilt Clause. They have to literally sign a paper saying that they started World War I. And then on top of that, they're forced to pay $33 million in reparations. Reparations is our last word, but I can start to explain it here. It's basically this bill that they're given for the war. Reparations, to expand upon that a little bit more, is basically money paid by a defeated nation to make up for the cost and damage of war. So Europe is just torn apart. Not only have they dug so many trenches, but the death of people, the bombing of areas, and the buildings that have been destroyed all over Europe basically falls to Germany. They're given this huge bill that they can't afford it. They themselves just lost a war, but they're given this to pay for all the damage to civilians, if you look at that picture, on land or sea or from the air. This is the end of the video portion. So what I just went through, is what you can kind of expect in days to come. And this is literally going to be the part you do at home or outside of the classroom. So you can do it in homeroom, you can do it after school, you can do it at home, whatever you want to do, you can do it whatever you want. But make sure that you are doing it, because if you don't, then that's when you don't get to participate in the in-class activities. You have to go finish your notes before you can join us. And I'm really excited about this, because if you come in with this information, you already have it and you already have the notes. That frees up so much time for us to do exciting things in class, new projects, new discussions, debates, anything you can think of. I mean, you guys can be a part of this too. What can we do with what we already know? What can we question about this that we can then spend some time investigating it? So, thanks for listening. Peace out.